That's not very pretty, is it?
My name's Matt Estley and I'm a professionally trained furniture maker here in the UK. And by my best estimations, it seems the world is going quite frankly mental. And so in response to it all, I've decided to pack it all in and live off-grid in a van. So far in this series, I've gone out and purchased a van, then gutted it, repainted and sealed it. And so next, the goal for this video is to get the windows, skylights, bed and solar panels installed. Let's get going. Now, starting with the windows and skylights. Some may say I've gone overboard with this because I've got 7 big holes to cut in this van.
No, I don't want to do it.
So while I'm marking this out, let me explain what's included in that number. We've got a Maxvan Deluxe at either end of the van for air circulation, a smaller skylight for ventilation in the wet room, 2 windows in the living area and 2 in the bedroom.
Can't be wrong. That is definitely a black line all the way around.
Clearly, if any of these holes are sized or situated wrong, then we've got a real problem. There's no reversing mistakes here and there's no replacement parts available.
The finish isn't great from that. It sort of skid around a little bit.
From what I could tell, it was a pretty good fit.
But these ridges here stop it from properly bottoming out. So like you can't really tell.
To make up the thickness between the ridges and to waterproof the flange, I used mastic sealing strips. Layers were progressively built up until I created a flat top for the flange to sit on. But simply screwing this skylight into the roof of the van won't provide enough strength alone. And so prior to this installation, I created a wooden frame that it can be fixed into. I know it's been a while since I've done any proper woodworking content, and so for you dedicated viewers out there, I bridal jointed the corners just for you. This clamping setup would allow me to compress the mastic strips so they're fully sealed while I add silicone around the edges. However, the frame on top restricted my access. So I unclamped the 2 frames from above, which then caused the inside one to drop, but capped in hindsight here then realised it was too big to pull back through the gap, and so looking like the absolute pillock I am, I got the 4 shorter bits of wood into position while simultaneously holding the other frame through the hole. The flange was then squished down with the clamps, which allowed me to seal the edges, and then I screwed it down through the roof of the van into the wooden frame on the inside and got everything assembled on top.
So then we've got this trim ring that slots in there, and that would be what's screwed up into this, or the cladding or whatever happens to be there.
So I followed the same method to install the front Maxvan, only facing minor inconveniences along the way.
Of course it starts raining. Oh, you bastard.
But despite this, I eventually got the second fan in place and was ready to move on to the next job.
We're going to look at installing these Dometic S4 windows.
Now, turns out I should have done more research before buying these, as I made a bit of a boo-boo when selecting them, and only realised this after I got them installed. So we'll talk about that in a minute, because first I need to grind away these panel supporting ribs while being super careful not to cut too deep. Then, with the help of my dad, we began cutting out the panels to accept the windows.
I think I measured this about 5 times yesterday.
I started by drilling out the corners of each window from the inside of the van.
It feels so wrong.
This would then allow me to trace the shape of the window from the outside of the van, making sure everything looked level and consistent to the exterior lines.
That's very good, isn't it?
Once we were happy with that, I came back with the jigsaw and got to work.
That bloody killed.
Yeah, that was a nice little iron filing spray.
I then filed down the rough edges and gave the raw metal a spray of paint, then began to apply primer to allow better adhesion for the window.
I don't like things that come in cans that look like that. It seems dangerous, doesn't it? Watch me spill this down the side of the van now.
I then flooded the window seal with a thick bead of Sikaflex, which is the same stuff I used on the skylights.
Yeah.
And then pressed the window into position.
I just remembered I haven't cut that frame to size. I'm going to quickly cut the frame down to match this. Sorry, it needs to take a bit more off. There we go.
The internal trim was then put into position and tightened down with the provided screws.
Does it look even? Yeah.
and this would really pull the windows in tight against the outside of the van.
A fair old pull of them. Lovely. No complaints there, yeah. I'll just remember to cut the frame to size on the next one. Get at least one more done before it starts pissing down, don't we?
And so before the forecasted rainstorm came in, we raced against the clock to get the rest of the windows fitted. I mentioned earlier that I should have done a bit of research before purchasing these windows, so let me explain why. These particular windows are made to be installed on flat panels. For example, things like motorhomes or even the back doors of vans. However, this van has curved sides, so if you just put the window in on a flat frame, it's going to distort those panels and make them look all weird from the outside, which is the reason why I shaped the frames to match the curvature of the van. All very well, however clearly it's going to put tension on the exterior frame. And so after installation, what I then realised is that Dometic sell a window that is made for curved vans. So if you're following this video hoping to get some advice, make sure to get those instead of these flat ones if you're working on a panel van like I am.
Bloody horrible. I really didn't expect to get 4 in today.
After that long day, I needed a little lay down somewhere. Trouble is, I don't have anywhere to do so the next thing we're going to do is begin working on the bed.
I need to get to that machine.
Now, prior to installing the windows, I'd already gone ahead and cut the material to size and began marking out the fixing holes. These aluminium angles are going to be fixed in position using riv nuts, a very heavy duty fixing that won't require any support from below. Perfect for giving me full access to the garage below the bed. When using this method of fixing, there's pretty much only one place you're able to attach the bed to the van, and I established its location using a laser level. But you gotta be careful when using the gravity setting on these in case the van is parked on uneven ground. So instead, I put the laser in the fixed position and measured each corner from the ground independently. Prior to installing the riv nuts, I made sure the raw metal left over from drilling the holes was covered in a layer of paint, and then I actually got some Loctite 638 retaining compound, which I normally use to assemble my knives, but as it's specifically designed to fix components under rotational load, I figured it would be perfect to prevent these riv nuts from slipping over time.
Alright, moment of truth. Let's see if they all line up. Right, so obviously you heard that sort of bang earlier. That is because one of the riv nuts has started spinning in there. You can sort of see the nut there, and if I turn it, you can see the whole thing turns. So what I'm going to try and do is get a multi-tool down there and see if I can cut a flat spot on the top and bottom of that riv nut, so then I can get a bit more purchase with these. But the last thing I want to do here is cut the top of the riv nut off completely, because then I've got no chance other than drilling out the bolt here. So we've got one flat spot on top there. Just need to spin the bolt around now and see if we can get one on the other side. No, I think we're going to have to just cut the bolt out.
While I was doing a stellar job, if I do say so myself, of removing this riv nut, I was thinking about how I wanted to fix it.
Hey! Okay, so the obvious answer here is I could re-drill this out and insert an M10 riv nut into it. But firstly, I don't have any other M10 riv nuts. Secondly, it would really annoy me if all the top ones were M10, all the bottom ones were M8, apart from this one. One option is to put a bolt through there, and because I found out I can get behind with my arm, I could put a nut on the back of it. And that's all very well, but if I ever needed to take the bed out in the future, this area is going to be stuffed with insulation, so I'm not going to be able to get back there very easily to hold onto that nut to undo it. So really, I still want it to be a rib nut.
To me, there was only one solution to this, and it was a risky one. I grabbed one of the offcuts from the windows, drilled a hole through it, rounded the corners using my guillotine to defile, primed it so there was no bare metal left over, covered it in 5-minute epoxy, and then tried to get it in position behind the stripped hole.
I think this is gonna work. Oh, we got squeeze out. We got squeeze out. Come on. I think that did it. I think that did it. No way. I hope this isn't foreshadowing anything, but I think that might be the best recovery I'm going to make in this whole project. So next, we're going to start cutting the aluminium extrusions to size to bridge across here.
These were going to be made from 45mm aluminium extrusion, which were cut to size using this special non-ferrous blade from my miter saw. Turns out that when designing this bed, I had massively overspec'd it and only needed half the amount of material to make up the required strength.
I've just got to drill out all eight of these holes in order to bolt down the aluminium extrusions. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a little bit long for it, but I think this will work. I tend to curl up a little bit when I sleep, so... Alright, so I've just bought a ton of poplar, way more than I need, because this is going to be what makes up the bed slat.
Now, of course, you don't need to go fancy for slats like this. You could just buy pre-machined timber, but if you've been around here a while, you'll know that I like to go over the top with things. Speaking of, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you haven't already. It really helps me out.
So next I need to countersink these holes in order to accept the head of these Allen screws. Now, I know I joke a lot on this channel, but I'm being serious at this point. Don't copy the method I'm about to do for this. I'm in a bit of a pinch. I don't have the right tool for it. I don't have the time to get the right tool for it. So I'm going to do something a little bit naughty.
I'll spare the reasoning as to why I had to use this dodgy method in this video, but if you want to see it, check out the in-depth series on the second channel. Suffice to say, this is what it looked like at the end.
Right, so the slats aren't fixed down yet, but so being 6'1", 6'2", I can't really sleep lengthwise, but I tend to curl up a little bit when I sleep anyway. Sleeping diagonally though. Oh, I think that'll be all right.
Next, we're going to come full circle and get back on the roof of the van for some final installations. Solar panels and another skylight.
Oh, bloody Sharpie.
Starting with the skylight, this is due to be above the wet room, and the only reason I didn't do this earlier was because my original one turned out to be too large to fit.
Definitely not big enough for this internal trim. That's almost 500mm.
So after sending it back to get a smaller replacement, I installed this in very much the same fashion as the large Max fans.
I'm always forgetting stuff up here. Bloody blue roll. I need a big old pair of those like long arm grabber things.
The quality definitely wasn't the same, and I very much question the integrity of these fixing clips.
I'm sure these fixings are fine, but honestly I don't trust them all that much.
But overall, it went in just fine. Finally, the last external modification to be added were the solar panels.
Using 3 of these 175 watt solar panels from Renogy.
Now, according to my SketchUp model, these will fit, but it's gonna be really, really tight. And just to be clear, if they don't, we're in real trouble because I can't actually move the skylights by this point.
Okay, so it fits perfectly between the two skylights, which, I mean, I measured it so many times, but it's still really relieving. The only thing I'm worried about is that if the solar panel is in this area here, that means that the brackets are somewhere above one of these ribs.
So I spent a bit of time shimmying it around, getting the position perfect.
I think we're there.
And then eventually fixed it down with some riv nuts. This method of fixing is definitely an improvement upon what's recommended in the instruction manual, which is to simply screw it into the roof with self-tapping screws. Mental, don't do that, bolt it at the very least. But having installed them this way, I have realised some of the limitations of it, in that should the solar panels ever need maintenance, you gotta unbolt it, rip up the sealant, and basically start from scratch. my opinion, a much better approach would be to use Unistrut. That's what a lot of other van converters do, and upon reflection would have been the best method for me, but never mind. And with that, the windows, the skylights, the solar panels, and even the bed as an extra bonus were installed. So in the next episode, we're going to begin focusing on insulation. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.